Welcome to the Knox Soccer Podcast, where we tell the soccer stories of our favorite big town, little city, Knoxville, Tennessee, and around the world. I'm Patrick Teasdale.
And I'm Brian Canever.
On this episode, we're reacting to the bombshells of news, soccer news, of Pocchetino coming to America, Mark McKeever leaving the 865, and a special guest to chat about everything to know about the Old City Stadium. Not baseball plans, soccer plans, y'all. Brian, I feel like this is like the episode of why this podcast exists. Are you ready?
I am ready. We are recording at noontime on a Friday on our lunch breaks, and I've been tingly. I've been feeling tingly all morning just to get at these topics. So I'm ready to rock, Patty.
Yesterday morning, I wake up to my screaming child, and already Brian and Jeff Markman are already lighting up the chat, talking about Pocchetino coming to coach the men's national team, which was, Christmas already for us. And then the other bombshell drops that Mark McKeever is leaving, and we get a press release coming out at 8 in the evening. So yeah, a lot to unpack here. All right, Brian, let's start. Let's go big. Let's go small. Going to the U.S. men's national team. We did it. We caught the white whale, like the biggest hire ever in U.S. men's national team history. Yeah, what are you feeling?
Man, like you said, Patty, we thought we were getting on to talk about the Old City Stadium news, which you will get to with our special guests a little later.
Yep.
But then we had these two coaching-related news items take place, and I think you and I, America's soccer fans all over the country, have been following along with the news of a potential hire for the men's national team. The women have been great. We just won the Olympics, tasted gold. I think they're calling themselves Triple Espresso, the front line of Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith.
That's awesome.
Mal Swanson. I mean, they were just splendid to watch. Trinity Rodman nutmegging a Brazilian in the final. Mal Swanson getting her goal. I was actually watching that at a mutual friend of ours, his house, Glenn Sharp, Club Glenn, as we know it.
Yes, Club Glenn.
We were having with some friends. We organized a meat wave, which is one day every year where God sends down all sorts of meats, just kilos and kilos of meat into his house in West Knoxville. And so we were there, and I reached out ahead of time. I was like, "Can we get the Olympic gold medal match on?" And we did. And so we saw, Emma Hayes.
Glenn has a big TV too, so that had to be incredible.
I had to fight DJ Loop for it. Our friend and listener, DJ Loop, he was watching the, I guess they called it the Charity Shield. Now it's the Community Shield. It's probably sponsored by,
was that the city playing cities?
Yes.
City playing Unite. Yeah. The Manchesters.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, it was
get rid of that. Get out the door.
Bet 365, Angry Birds, Bridgestone tires cup, whatever they call it now. And and he was hogging the TV, and I said, DJ, please, America needs this.
Yeah.
They need us to watch this. And he said, only after United wins. Now, the two Argentine national team players, Garnacho and Licha Martinez, scored in the penalty kick shootout, but they lost the city. And immediately DJ changed the narrative from this is, United's going to win. This is going to be great for us to, it's only a friendly match. Who cares? But yeah, we saw Emma Hayes justify her position. And then all of us were like, okay, we need to know what's going on with the men. Steve Cherundolo's name had been thrown about. Some other coaches that were coaching in Europe had been thrown about. And the entire time, I'm such a cynic at this point in my life, Patty, that I was looking at the MLS table and looking at the bottom team, which is currently in the East. It's the New England Revolution, who's coached by Caleb Porter. And so I was like, that's going to be the guy. Or the San Jose Earthquakes that are bottom of the West, and they've got an interim coach, Ian Russell, And I was like, yep, that's what we're going to go for. We're going to go for basically bottom of the barrel, generic American coach. And people were still like hyped up, and it's like, oh, we were initially hyped about Klopp. Klopp ruled it out. And then we were like, could it be some other international manager that becomes available? England also in the search for a manager. And so a lot of names got thrown about. And I feel like we, once again, we won the American Revolution, the war of 1796, like however you want to frame it, because we got Mauricio Pocchetino, who is a high level, high profile, extremely successful club coach, never coached the international level.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting.
And when the news broke, I think the rumors went out at like 11 or 12 late at night here on the East Coast. And so when I was way asleep by then. So by the time I woke up at 5 a.m, it was confirmed. So I was texting back everybody who was like, oh, it's rumors.
Yeah, rumors. Confirmed, and everyone had their peace out and all this stuff. So it was just, it was amazing.
Man, I have some thoughts, Patty, but first, what's your reaction? I know you are a Spurs loyalist. Pochettino made part of his fame, the club he coached that longest was Spurs in England, where he had a 55% winning percentage, led him to a Champions League final, solidified them in that top 6 category. What are your thoughts about?
First, I'm a Gunner loyalist, so yes, for him to be from Spurs, that hurts a little bit, but did take him to the Champions League final. Also is credited with huge development with Kane and as well as Son. When I first experienced Pochettino was in the Southampton days. That's when I got into watching the EPL, and so was super impressed by Southampton, and then just kind of their, playing the kids, developing the kids, and he continued to do that development wise with Spurs, and then went to Paris Saint-Germain. I feel like you have that revolving door, and everyone wins when they go there. So he got one under the belt there, and then went to Chelsea, and Chelsea was a dumpster fire. And he did okay. So yeah, he's coming off of sitting on the sidelines a little bit, but his pedigree, what he has done with the teams that he has coached, makes me excited, gets me really excited. And a foreign manager, not familiar with the U.S., actually gets me more excited, because it like none of the players have experience with this coach, and so everyone's on a level playing field. You got to play for your spot, I'm assuming, and it's like, you got to show out, and it's going to be different. He's going to have to adjust because it's a national team now. But I mean, we're going into the World Cup with a championship holding, a high level, international coach. Like, this is going to be so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah. And my apologies. If I said Spurs, I meant to say Gunners. I'm in the we're both in the mid-workday malaise.
Yeah,
so forgive us, listeners.
I'm looking at the baby monitor, making sure my child is still asleep. So we are making sure everything's happening.
I'm listening to mine stampede above my head right now, which means my wife still hasn't put them down for a nap. But yeah. So my reaction, Pochettino is Argentinian. He is from Santa Fe province, same province as my family. He's from a little town called Murphy. Played for Newell's Old Boys there, which is the eternal rival of my team, Rosario Central. It is also the team that Lionel Messi played for as a youth. He was coached by Marcelo Bielsa, who we all know really well, El Loco, the crazy one, who's now coaching the Uruguay national team, but was kind of came to everybody's attention in America when he coached Leeds a few seasons ago, and Pochettino's been known as a Bielsa disciple. So getting away from just the impact, the splash that the name makes because of the familiarity with him coaching at the elite level. This is a guy who is a very attack-minded, progressive coach. Loves to work with young players, and that is absolutely great news for us, because I was looking at a table today of the ages of the players who participated in the Copa America in 2024, and we've got the vast majority, 85% of our players are in that peak category of being between 24 and 29 years old. We've only got two players that were above 30, and that was Tim Ream, the eternally young Tim Ream at 36. I think he's since turned 37, and then Sean Johnson at 35, who's the backup goalie. And then we've got a bunch of players who are still under 23. Patty, I think sometimes we forget this because we've been around the national team and we've grown familiar with their youth. That's something that we do have to kind of thank Greg Berhalter for emphasizing, bringing in young players. Joe Scally, 21 years old. Brendan Aronson, 23 years old. And of course, his younger brother, Paxton, played at the Olympics.
Yep.
Malik Tillman's only 22. Yunus Musa, these are the big, Yunus Musa and Giovanni Reina, 21 years old. Balogun, who we knew because he was playing at Spurs, he's been playing in Europe for a while, 22. Pepe, 21. And these are this is the exact profile of player that Pochettino likes to work with, because just like Bielsa, his mentor, when you get those big name players like Mbappe or Messi that he coached at PSG, it's really hard to convince them to do the dirty work.
Yep.
Bielsa was famous for this when he was at Athletic Bilbao. He would alienate a lot of the star players and he would promote the youth players. In fact, when Bielsa was being talked about as a potential Everton replacement 2 years ago, before they signed Deitch, he said, "You know what? I actually would like to coach your under 23s until the end of the season, and then I'll take over the first team later." Because it's much easier to convince younger players to do all that running and hustling about. And I think that's why Pochettino struggled at PSG, even though they did win the league and the cup that year.
But the same thing for Chelsea too. I mean, it was all stars.
Well, we saw, so Chelsea last year did, the first half of the season was really poor. They were like 12th or 13th at the break. They wound up finishing 6th. They wound up qualifying for Europe. They made the final of the League Cup, which they lost. But the team ended the season. I think they were on a 5-game win streak. They scored 15 or 16 goals, averaging 3 goals a game. And when you look at a breakdown of their season last year, in terms of shot quality, chance creation, circulating the ball around, progression of the ball up the field, like this, they were in the higher percentiles of Premier League teams. Now, where they were poor, chance prevention. So that means that in pressing really high, in attacking very aggressively, they left themselves vulnerable. And I mean, Chelsea did get scored against a lot last season, and also resisting the press from other teams, right? When other teams put pressure on them, Chelsea struggled a little bit. But I think that with the players that the U.S. has, Christian Pulisic has carried the weight for so long. I think he's going to feel like a sense of relief. I think that, Tyler Adams is going to love this style because you really rely on those central midfielders to break up and get the ball back to the attackers. I think it's going to be easy to convince to get the buy-in from the U.S. players to hustle and chase and fight. And I think that's part of like the gritty American spirit anyway. It's almost in a sense returning us to our roots, where yes, we love the flash. We love the sexiness of this team. But I remember back in like the late 2000s, Michael Bradley's heyday. And I think Michael Bradley was playing in Italy at the time. And I had read an interview with one of his teammates I think he was at Chievo Verona. And they had said, like, Michael can run circles around every player on this team because that's what Americans are known for. We hustle and look at how we did in the Olympics, dude. Track and field, we killed it. And so getting these players to really like dig down and fight and be gritty ahead of our own World Cup is going to be important. And I think he'll get it. When you look at his winning percentages, I mean, they've been all above 50%, except for when he was at Southampton, which was, a team that was struggling, new to the Premier League, and at Espanyol before that, where that was his first coaching gig. But he has a ton of international experience as a player. He played for the Argentine national team. This is one funny anecdote, Patty, that I don't think our listeners will be familiar with. But in 2002, when Argentina got eliminated in the first round of the World Cup, biggest embarrassment of the last, 30 years of Argentinian national soccer, they in part went out because of a penalty that was given to England in the second group stage game, which Michael Owen converted. Argentina lost that game 1-0, or rather, it was against Michael Owen. David Beckham converted. So Argentina lost 1-0. Then they went on to tie Sweden 1-1, and they were eliminated. Well, Pochettino gave up that PK. And it was a controversial PK. I remember watching it live with my grandfather, and I was like, no. Well, Pochettino actually has a framed picture of that foul hanging in his home, signed by Michael Owen. So he like never forgets it. And he gave an interview last year with The Guardian where he talked about the importance of national teams and how he would be interested in coaching a national team, even if it's not Argentina. I think he's going to get what this means to American fans before our home World Cup. I think he's going to feel super, super comfortable in the limelight. The thing that worries me, Patty, is that we will not have qualifiers, and the other best nations in the world will all be doing qualifiers in South America, in Europe. So getting quality opponents in friendlies, I think we've got 16 international windows. That's it before the World Cup. That makes me a little nervous, but if somebody can handle it, I think Pocchetino will.
So hopefully that they can schedule quality opponents before that, I'm super pumped about this, man. This is so exciting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it feels good to talk about it now, and it feels good to brag on our coach. Where Triple G, especially after he came back, he had a good winning percentage that first go around, even though we didn't play a lot of high profile South American or European teams. But then he came back after that, sour taste in the mouth with the Gio Reyna controversy. And, and I think we have to thank Tim Weah for, finally letting the hat drop and letting Greg go, picking up that red card in the Copa America that, got us that loss. Yeah. So we can talk over the next couple of months as games are played about what needs to happen. I think America is known for having amazing goalkeepers. Pochettino's teams can leak goals at times, and right now our starting and backup goalkeepers, Matt Turner, he's playing at Nottingham Forest. He was largely a backup last season. Even Ethan Horvath just went to Cardiff City. He was a backup to Turner, so he was a backup to the backup. So we need to figure that out. Tim Ream's still in the mix at 36, 37. We really should be bringing more youth in, but we saw with Carter Vickers and some of the other options that we have in the back, Chris Richards, and maybe not fully ready for that starting spot yet. So we'll see. So that's one coach down, Patty. And now,
but let's also talk of another coach that has an incredible back line and an amazing goalkeeper, Mark McKeever, but still Mark McKeever is leaving the 865 One Knoxville SC on mutual terms. That was made public late last night. My phone was blowing up once again with Brian and Jeff. When it was announced...
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. When it was announced, it was like, you know what? Like, thank you, but goodbye, Mark. It was kind of a thing of like, it kind of makes sense because like we were like winding up for our questions for our special guest. The results have started to come in this, second season in USL 1, third season with Mark McKeever. But just, it hasn't been as dramatic as we've been promised. So yeah, hearing the news, it all kind of clicked. It made sense. It wasn't too big of a surprise. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah. So first, let's lead with this, Patty. So, Mark McKeever, his arrival in Knoxville coincides with the start of this podcast. Our third ever episode, in fact, episode number 3 was meeting the coach. It was my interview with Mark McKeever.
It was awesome.
He led out the boys in their inaugural USL League 2 campaign. It was him making his transition from college coaching, where he had been really successful in Georgia, to the amateur and pro game. He had coached a lot of future pros. And I think while that USL League 2 season was really fun and exciting, we lost in, the national quarterfinals. Then he had to transition to the first USL League 1 season, where he no longer had access to the same international players that he had before, because USL League 1 has really strict rules about international players. I think you can only have 7 or 8 a team. Now that USL League 2 team was 90% international compared to Americans. And that may have led to some of the struggles, but last year we missed the playoffs. We had we were either bottom or second bottom for goals scored. I can't recall exactly, even though we had the best defense in the league and we had the Golden Glove winner in Sean Lewis. This season, it was much of the same. We haven't scored in our last 2 games. Our last game, a cup game against Lexington in the Jägermeister Cup, we lost that in penalty kicks. The team has only scored 12 goals in 12 games, so 1 goal a game this year, and has 9 goals against. So once again, we have the worst attack, best defense in the league, which is great. But, one of the things Mark McKeever told me that I was cling to was, he said he'd rather lose a game 4-3 than win 1-0. And that just hasn't played out for various reasons. It could be getting adjusted to the pros. It could be not having that personnel. It could be, just a culture clash, or, who knows? But I think that the administration, the ownership team, Drew McKenna, general manager, probably felt like, hey, with the new stadium coming up, with attendance numbers kind of like, in that 1,000 to 2,000 range at Regal Soccer Stadium, with the fans, those hardcore soccer fans like you and I, when it's 95 degrees outside and the game's starting at 7, and you usually put your kids down at 7:30. Why do you want to go watch a team that probably isn't going to score a goal in the game?
Yep.
It's hard to justify and travel to it and deal with parking and all that stuff.
And we are the diehards. So if that's the mentality of the diehards, then the fair weather fans, all my friends at work, they're not going to come out and make that trek out there.
Yeah.
They have named Ilya Ilyich, player coach from last year, and he is an assistant coach. He is going to be the interim coach now for the rest of the season, which is super exciting. It was super awesome to see him on the field last season, and then now coaching wise. And it seems like the reaction to him getting that opportunity has been incredible. Using the phrase one of our own, the players, he is a player and player at heart, and now a coach. And so I'm super pumped for the rest of the season, even though it is an interim thing. And also on the side, I love the business of hiring a coach and giving it a new face and whatnot, as you can tell by our chat about the U.S. So to find a new coach to get us into the playoffs this season, or to lead us into our 3rd season of USL 1 at a brand new stadium, mind you. I'm pumped about it. I am sad to see Mark McKeever leave. We wish him all the best here from the podcast as well as from One Knox. And can't wait to see what he does. And it seems like from him and his quotes, he can't wait to see what One Knoxville produces as well.
Yeah, it is a sad farewell, but grateful to Mark for getting this team's start and leading them out into the pros. I was kind of following a little bit of the reaction to the news, and some people were surprised because One Knox is sitting in 5th. We're in the playoff hunt. We are in a better position this year than we were last year. We're not completely out of the Jägermeister Cup either, even though only one team from each of the 4 groups is going to advance to the semifinals. So we're sitting in a good position, but I think probably that style culture has been more of the challenge. We know there were also some backroom issues before the start of this season that kind of reared their head in the local media. But the reaction to Ilya Ilyich has been great. Some people on social media have been calling him a real players coach. He was playing as recently as last year. He's been around the players and the club. He was a college player of Mark's, had played with a lot of these guys before coming to Knoxville. So I think people are excited about it. I'm really curious. Whenever you see, for example, when Berhalter, left and we had an interim who had been an assistant in place, I'm always curious to see if there's going to be a distinction between the coaching style of the head coach and the assistant coach.
Yeah.
Will Ilya go for more of the same? Or will his style look completely differently? And what's going to be the player reaction to that? So we'll see it. Actually, we'll see it tonight because they play against the Red Wolves. Yep. You will already know the score by the time you listen to this podcast. So, Patty, I'm sad for Mark, but I'm excited for the future of One Knoxville. I'm really curious to see if they will name a full-time coach before the end of the season, or if they will continue with Ilya, depending on results. I'm an Everton supporter in the Premier League. A couple of years ago, when we fired, one of our head coaches. We wound up with Big Duncan Ferguson as a head coach for interim head coach, won a couple of big games, beat Chelsea. And so, and then everyone was really disappointed when he didn't get the full-time gig. He wound up leaving. So, I'm excited for Ilya. We'll see what happens. And I think, am I right, Patty? Do we have another big discussion still left to go on this podcast?
We do.
All righty. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into your chat with our very special guest about everything Old City Stadium, when it's happening, what it's going to be like, how much it's going to cost to go, how often fireworks will be blowing into the sky, presumably after we win the USL League One next year.
Yep.
That
billboard that currently says future home of Southeastern champs, the Smokies, it's going to say now the home of USL One champions.
How One great Knoxville would it be if we could win the Jägermeister Cup before the end of the season? Get above Madison. It says future home of Jägermeister Cup champions.
Yes.
One Knoxville.
Oh my gosh.
All righty. Without further ado, let's get into it.
For today's guest, we have longtime alum of the pod. We'd say even friend of the pod, Drew McKenna, managing partner of One Knoxville SC. Drew, welcome back to the Knox Soccer Podcast. How are you, man?
Well, I consider the Knox Soccer Podcast a friend of mine, so I'm grateful that the friendship is reciprocated.
Absolutely. All right, well, first news, straight out of the gate. So Mark McKeever is out, mutual agreed exit. Explosive and exciting USL 2 season. First year in USL 1 was a 9-12-11 record, finishing just outside of playoffs. This year so far, 6-4-2 and then 3-2-2 in the Cup. So the results have been improving this season, even though the goals haven't. Did the playing style or the lack of potency influence any of the decision to part ways with McKeever?
No, something that I tell folks a lot, independent of the conversation we're talking about, is most of the parts of running a soccer club are just like running any other business. And, the head coach of a soccer team, performance on the field is certainly a key metric. And Mark and One Knox historically have had some great achievements. We've had some great achievements this year. Had some great achievements recently. 5 clean sheets out of the last 6 is incredible, and that came from a tactical shift that we made recently and should be celebrated. But just like in business outside of sports, in order for there to be a cohesive working relationship between an employer and an employee, a lot goes into it, and some of it is performance related, and some of it is perspectives and desires and next steps. And we reached a point where it made sense for the club and for Mark to agree to move forward in separate directions. And so that's what we're going to do. We certainly, wish Mark well. He'll always be a very meaningful part of who One Knox is, right? You look at any soccer club across the world, and part of their history is that first season and that first coach and all that sort of stuff. And that will always be Mark. And we're proud of that. Everybody's had frustrations with the One Knox on the field, I'm sure, including myself, including Mark. But we had some great times. I mean, I remember specific moments with you, Patty, in 2022 that were a ball. We've had some great successes professionally as well. And Mark is the driver behind that. And that will be how I remember Mark, and I hope how the club remembers Mark. And maybe his greatest legacy to One Knox is, as we look for our next leader, we're in a much better place, much more compelling place to find that next person than we were when we started. I mean, Mark agreed to walk into a situation that was nothing. It was truly nothing. We didn't have an office. We had nothing other than a vision, and he bought into that. And as that's come to life over the last 2.5, 3 years, warts and all. He has been a big part of building that, and we're grateful for that.
Yeah. Okay. So Ilya Ilic, interim coach now. And what's the plan and hope for the remainder of the season?
Well, first on Ilya, of all the things that have come out of this, the fact that Ilya Ilic has an opportunity as an interim head coach is something I'm really proud of. Ilya is a great guy. He has the respect and appreciation of the locker room. And for us to be able to go forward with someone like Ilya is really awesome to me. As far as what the expectations are, we expect that our interim head coach and Nick as our assistant and the 22, 23 boys we have are going to take the field as professionals for every game and put in the best effort possible, both for the club and for themselves. And what that looks like from an outcome perspective, there are less defined expectations. As far as my perspective, I think we have a very capable group of individuals, and I think that we are currently in a good position. And so, I certainly don't want our coaching staff, our players, or our fans to sell us short. I think there's a lot of opportunity ahead of us, and it will be the work of the locker room to go pursue that opportunity as a group. So I'm not selling us short. I think there's a lot to play for. I know the boys think there's a lot to play for.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah. And then I know we're 24 hours into this, but how soon do you expect to make a full-time hire? Is it see the season out or hire ahead of playoffs?
Yeah, great question. I haven't started any of that, as you might expect. Yesterday was about a different set of circumstances. Today's a game day, which I'm excited for. I hope our fans are excited for. By the time of this posting, we'll probably know the result. I hope it's great. Rubbing my rabbit's foot on that. But, what are next steps? We're certainly going to go through the process. The priority of that process will be to make sure that One Knox is in a position to be successful for the long term. And we won't sacrifice immediacy in trying to make sure we make the right hire for the long term. 2025, as you know, Patty, is a massive, massive year for us. And we need to be best positioned to make sure we're taking advantage of the long-term opportunity starting in 2025. I will also say, to that point, as I just said, I feel really confident with the group of guys we have in the locker room, and I'm really proud that Ilya is leading them. So that in addition provides a little bit of safety in my perspective as we make sure we're making the right hire for the long term.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well. The rest of the season and the guys on the field and Ilya taking them there. So very cool. All right, 2025. So it's a big year, like you said. Old City Stadium is flying up. Super pumped about it as I drive by each and every time. But I have been wondering, how are they going to fit a soccer pitch in there? So can you let us in on the plan of Old City Stadium to accommodate One Knoxville home matches?
The answer is they will fit a soccer pitch in there very snugly. It will be the Federation minimums from a size perspective, 110 yards long, 70 yards wide. Can't go more narrow than that. But it checks the box.
Very cool.
The sideline will run down the first base line. So, midfield will be seats that are just past first base. From a baseball perspective, that sideline will be just inside the first base line. So just past, just into fairground. And then, one goal line will be, it'll actually butt up pretty close to the third base dugout, if that makes sense. So past foul into foul territory. And that will run all the way down the right field line. And the other goal will be up against close to the outfield wall. Okay. So it fits nicely. How we get there is a process. You may have heard about the retractable mound that's going in. That's been talked about publicly. It's only the 5th ever anywhere. The pitcher's mound will be on a platform that can be lowered, mechanically lowered and raised through a hydraulic system, which is really cool. Saves a ton of time and money, and it is a better experience for both baseball and soccer. So we're pumped about that.
Wonderful. And so having to share with the Smokies.
Getting to share with the Smokies.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Getting to share. I could go back on that. Getting to share with the Smokies, who will be in season during the same time One Knox is. How often will the field turn over and have to lower that mound and bring that mound back up?
Yeah. So as is appropriate, the Smokies will have first dibs on scheduling. I've said this before, but what Randy Boyd did to bring the stadium to life is incredible. And it's a huge gift to Knoxville. And so, we understand and appreciate that this is the Smoky Stadium and we get to play there. So the way it'll work is they'll set their schedule first and then we'll fill in dates behind.
Cool.
The amount of times that it'll be converted will be something like 9 to 12 times per year. And then, you can imagine that before their season starts, we start about 5 weeks before they do. We end about 5 weeks after they do. And so you can imagine that there might be some overweighting on those windows where we can play around one conversion.
And so Regal's capacity, 3,000, and regular team attendance has been closer to 1 to 2,000. What's the capacity and attendance expectations for the Old City?
So Old City's capacity is 6,500. That's in baseball configuration. We may look at adding a few seats that are soccer specific. The expectation, short of numbers, is an expectation built around experience. We think it'll be a very, very, very different experience in Old City. I was putting some information together for some folks, and I looked at the stadium is a huge opportunity. Old City is, like, in my opinion, the most vibrant neighborhood in Knoxville, right? So to be able to be a part of that is great. I was thinking, from that context, I was thinking about Regal. What neighborhood is Regal in?
Nothing. Neyland Drive.
Yeah, you can't name it. Like walkability scores, I looked up. Regal doesn't have a walkability score. Old Cities has an 82 out of 100 walkability score. I think there's 27 bars or restaurants within a quarter mile of the Old City Stadium. There's 0, around Regal. And that's not to say we're not so grateful for UT and the Regal opportunity. That's only we were able to go pro was because of that. But Old City's a massive step up from a fan experience perspective, and we're really excited about that. Inside the stadium, it's going to be totally different too. We're totally reimagining what game days are going to look like. 200-foot scoreboard that we can live camera to throughout the game is going to be massive. The way we use things like pyro, the way we celebrate goals, the way we use digital signage, like all of these things aren't possible at Regal, not because Regal's not great, but because Old City Stadium is a brand new, state-of-the-art facility. And so we're really focused on creating an experience that's totally differentiated from what's come before. And we think if we can do that, we'll certainly be able to drive attendance in a significant way.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we absolutely love the fan experience at Regal Soccer Stadium. Yep. What are the plans for the new stadium when it comes to fan offerings, food, entertainment, food trucks, etc.?
Yeah. Well, let's start pregame, right? Like that European culture of meeting up for a beer and a sandwich at a local bar or restaurant. Old City's perfect for that, right? And so, we will work hard with the great establishments in Old City to make sure we're creating, a holistic experience around a One Knox game day that stretches outside the stadium. You talk about fan marches, right? Supporter marches. I think
Zach has already said, starting at the hub, coming all the way down from Market Square into the Old City to the stadium. So a long parade route. We got it nailed down.
Yeah, get your step counter on.
Let's go.
If Zach can kick that off there, that's great, and we'll make sure we tie into it once they hit Old City. But I think that's something that there's a lot more teeth to that in Old City than is possible in Regal. So thinking about that. Once you're in the stadium, concessions will be very different. It's going to be a quote unquote big boy stadium, right? So we'll have like a full concession offering, a concessionaire that is experienced in stadium, this type of stadium, this type of activation. So our hope is that we have kind of unique soccer oriented offerings. I'm not promising this, but I've seen other stadiums where they have kind of the Das Boot beer thing, right? Yep. And I work hard to figure out if we can find something awesome. That's good. And then when you're at your seat, a much more 21st century presentation around how we're using digital, how we're using cameras, how we're using all that sort of stuff. So for people like you and listeners who've been with us since the start, which we're so grateful for, I would just encourage you to keep an open mind about what's possible, because we're hoping to bring a totally different experience into Old City. And the last thing I'll say is that's not easy or free, right? That takes that takes investment and work, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're scaling our staff, we're bringing in new expertise, we're creating new roles, all around the idea of how we can take advantage of the opportunity that the Old City Stadium offers.
Very cool. So we're going from camping chairs in Maryville to now seat back chairs in Old City Stadium. It's a big leap, and we're excited about it.
Don't ask me which one is better, because I'm not sure I know. They're both great.
Camping chair had its moment, which is great. So fans, especially those with families, are going to have eye on prices for tickets. We know this is going to be a brand new modern stadium. Are you expecting an increase in general admission tickets? And what will the expected prices be for the new stadium?
Going to break some news here. Making sure it's family affordable is definitely a priority. So season tickets will start at $15 per game per seat. Awesome. We'll work with supporters on an offer that it might be unique to them, but generally the supporter section, but generally, general admission, $15 per person per seat, which we think, still makes it quite affordable. Your whole season is under $300 per person. So family of four can get in there for under $1,200 for the full season. We feel like that's affordable. From a concessions perspective, not far enough along to share anything, but we want to make sure that we don't want to be nickel and diming everybody when they want to come out and enjoy Knoxville, enjoy a One Knox game. So that's certainly a priority. That said, there is going to be other opportunities at the stadium that will have price points that haven't existed in the past for One Knox, but those come with offerings that we haven't been able to offer either. So we'll run the gamut a bit, but definitely going to anchor ourselves to having an option for folks who want to be price conscious.
Very cool. Drew, that's all I had for you question-wise. What other news can you want to share? When can people expect to get their hands on those tickets, and any other things for the Old City Stadium?
We will be releasing season ticket deposits next week. We'll have deposits available to reserve your spot. It's kind of a first come, first serve situation. If you get in and make a deposit, that locks your place in line for seat selection, all that sort of stuff. The deposit is $50 per seat. That's totally, that is a prepayment on your season ticket plan. So that just gets translated to a reduction in cost when you convert to a season ticket holder. And we're really excited about getting that kicked off and giving people the first opportunity to make sure they can jump in and reserve their seat at the Old City Stadium. Awesome.
Well, we're excited about it. We'll get it out to everyone to put their money down, get that deposit in, and have their claim on the next chapter of One Knoxville FC, being in the Old City. Drew, thanks so much for joining us on the pod. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So come on anytime.
Thank you, Patty. Grateful for all the work you guys do.
Yep. One Knoxville faithful, that's all we got for you today, the Knox Soccer Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to sign up on our newsletter at knoxsoccerpodcast.com. Huge thanks to Markman Jewelers for sponsoring the podcast. And be sure to show them some love. And with that, we'll see you in the stands.